It's Bill Warren here. Yeah, I know my overview videos on COVID-safe airflow and ventilation run long. One of them's 26 minutes. But I promise you on this one, I'm going to make it short and sweet. Now, that means you may have some questions. Well, go to those longer videos after you see this one, and you'll probably find your answers there. But now, let's get on to it. How do we stay safe by reducing our risk for COVID exposure in the indoor space? Well, here's my #1 recommendation for you. Just stay outside. The databases tell us that there is very few confirmed cases of completely outdoor transmissions. The reason is that the sky is the limit. And so even if I had a super spreader standing right next to me, his droplets and aerosols would be immediately diluted to the open air, even if there was no wind. We don't need the mask so much outdoors, but we really need the mask indoors, inside of buildings. That's where virtually all of the confirmed cases of COVID transmissions are taking place. And in particular, inside of houses. A recent paper that I looked at said 50% of the people in a household where someone was infected also got infected within 7 days. COVID-19 is transmitted when an infected individual breathes out droplets and aerosols. Aerosols are heavy and fall to the ground, usually within 6 feet. So to get infected by them, you have to be very close to the person to breathe it in directly, or it gets on your hands and you put your hands in your mouth or rub your eye. Well, aerosols, on the other hand, they don't settle. They fly and keep flying like that smoke. And they'll get transported through the whole house or building, traveling on the gentle airflows that take place from the HVAC vents, exhaust fans, open windows, wind, and even stack effect in the winter and the summertime. And scientists tell us that aerosols can remain viable for up to an hour or more. So how do you keep getting infected from droplets and aerosol exposure? Well, I think of it as dosage. Your primary goal is no dose, no infection. And failing that, then you'd like to get the smallest dose possible, such that whatever you get in, your immune system can react to it and you build antibodies and you're not symptomatic. Big dose, you end up symptomatic, sick. The surefire way to get no dose is to just self-isolate at home. And the only people you come in contact with are people that you know are doing the exact same thing as you are. But there's not a lot of us that can do that. So what's for them? If you can't fully self-isolate, you need removal strategies. We need to keep droplets and aerosols out of the breathing space. Let's start with the mask. The mask is a two-way filter. I breathe out droplets and aerosols, I'm infected. The mask is going to catch the vast majority of those on this surface. If you're infected and you're breathing droplets and aerosols, the mask is going to catch some of those and keep them from my breathing space. We know that masks don't remove all the droplets and aerosols from getting into the indoor breathing space. So that's why we need a preventive removal strategy. And that, our primary tool, is a HEPA room air cleaner running continuously. For COVID-safe airflow, keep your thermostat fan position in on. That means it will run continuously, and that is a good dilution strategy. What do I mean by that? Well, air is now going to be flowing all the time throughout the supply registers, back to the returns, and all through the spaces. And that's going to create gentle airflows all over the place. And if I have a contaminated air source coming out of an individual with COVID-19, that means that that dose will get diluted. And then if you come across it, you'll be getting a diluted dose as opposed to a concentrated dose. And there's a study coming out of Sweden recently in hospitals where they went in and sampled the HVAC system and found that when they did that, when they came across the virus, which they did find up there on the supply registers even, and they found that it was non-viable. So if that holds true, not only is it a dilution strategy, but it would be a removal strategy. In the homes, just do this continuously. in a commercial building or any other type of building where you have known occupancy, you just need to run your systems continuously. That's what you should do. Well, I got to complicate things. I just recommended continuous air circulation with a thermostat fan switch set in the on position. So that means now I've got air coming out of that supply vent and all the other supply vents continuously, and they're all going back to that return, in my case, which is down in that corridor down there. That means I'm going to have a directional airflow that's coming this way. Now, this is the point. You do not ever want to get yourself downwind of somebody that you know has got COVID-19 or you suspect that they are, because that is going to increase the chance that even though these aerosols and droplets would be diluted, that they're going to be coming past you in this direction. And it gets particularly worse when you get all the way down there to that door opening, because that is a confining space. So that diluted amount is going to have to get reconcentrated and accelerate as it goes by you. So the worst place you could be standing if I had COVID-19 could be right down there, 22 feet away at that door threshold. This is the hallway in my house. It's only 3 feet wide, it's 8 feet high, and it's fairly long, as you can see. I now consider this a confining space when it comes to COVID-19. And what does that mean? Well, I'm recommended you use directional airflow, yes, and I've told you to stay out of the downstream side of that airflow. But then when we get to this space here, we're getting another problem, because the diluted air that was out in the main room by the direct circulation now gets reconcentrated as it comes to this narrower space. And it's my opinion that that's going to increase the potential of you getting an increased dosage as opposed to a low dosage. In a nutshell, what I take and apply this to all building types is I want to keep us away from being nearby or under or beside a return, because all airflow from the space is coming to that point. We'll start at the hallway return and start walking upstream. We come through the hallway, which I've already told you was a confining space. Now through this doorway, that's a confining space. Now we come out to the master bedroom. That's a diluted space, and now another hallway, confining space, and finally come out into my office and come to the supply register. It's 50 feet from that return to this end supply over my head in my messy office. If I had COVID-19, and I'm discharging a lot of droplets and aerosols right now, I've got the perfect condition to have problematic airflow. I've got directional airflow coming from the supply going to the return. It travels along its way through a number of confining spaces. And anybody downstream of me, downwind of me, is going to be more likely to get a dose of that because of this airflow. Now, what I need you to get out of this little point here is that this is why the 6-foot rule inside of buildings does not apply. In this particular case, I would need it to be more than 50 feet for that to work. I want to give you one more strategy for removal of droplets and aerosols that get into the breathing space. And this one is particularly suited for a COVID isolation bedroom. The strategy, a fan in a window blowing out. This would be direct exhaust ventilation. And this does the following. The contaminated air that's in this room is now going to be pulled in this direction, out the fan and out to the outside. That means it's not going to go back to the main body of the house. And if we close the bedroom door and create just a slight amount of negative pressure in here, very, very little chance that any airflow goes back to the main body of the house. Where does this come from? This comes from infectious disease control negative depressurization rooms in hospital for COVID-19. Can't do better than that. I think we're done here. Now I got to go edit the darn thing and see how short and sweet it's going to be. I'm Bill Warren. Stay safe, stay sane, and crank up that fan, but just a little bit.